All right, everybody, welcome to Now That's Debatable. Got a really interesting episode today because we have a whole bunch of guests coming on. So I think this might be a pretty intriguing one, given that both me and my typical co-host, Triboulet, are probably going to be the quietest ones in the bunch because we want to sit back and kind of listen and learn to people's opinion and what they have to say on the matter. If that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to get on our show. We'd love to have you as a guest. Doesn't matter if you're not at all known or if you're super famous and you want to come on and talk with us and debate with us and have a discussion. That's what we're here for. Triboulet, if you want to go ahead and give Relic Media a plug, then I'm going to get our faces up on the screen and we're going to get this thing kicked off.
Yeah, Relic Media is a new streaming service that we partnered with. If you want to learn more about them, just get in touch with us or Relic Media directly. We'll get you part of Relic Media family. All right, so today we're going to talk about reparations. So just to get the conversation going, I'll kind of tell you my view on it. So I think any sort of moral injustice that ever happened throughout history, I think it ought to be rectified. To me, that's not even a question. The only problems that I really run into are logistics, like being able to implement it in a just way. So what are your thoughts on that? Does anybody think that reparations just ought not to be paid at all, or there's any thoughts on that?
So are we able to define reparations so that we're all on the same page?
Sure. So typically when we talk about reparations is usually like in regard to slavery. I don't even necessarily take it back that far. So like I'd be okay with kind of letting the slavery thing go. Mm-hmm. We talk about all the injustice that happened with the Federal Housing Authority. Blacks were just robbed of a lot of opportunities of getting wealth just through their ability to purchase homes. We talk about, for instance, like during the Great Depression when everybody was broke. That included Black Americans as well. The New Deal was supposed to come and help bring everybody, back to financial stability. Blacks were completely prevented from taking any part of that, which led to, huge deficits in amount of generational wealth, right? Which forced a lot of Black families into really poor neighborhoods. Their schools are funded by property taxes from the poor neighborhoods. So as a result, Blacks are going to get really bad schools. This isn't an accident. Like this is all a causal chain. So I think there just should be like some sort of measures implemented to try to fix that.
Yeah.
Not that slavery should just be forgotten, but if we could get something just to fix this problem that happened with the Federal Housing Authority, I might be willing to overlook.
I personally don't think that would be enough, and I know for sure that you can't erase slavery. That's probably the largest part of it, because when you go into the three phases, as a lot of people allude to, you go to the slavery phase, then you go to the 100 or so years right after slavery of the Jim Crow laws and things of that nature, and then you go to what we have in the present time is like as far as systematic slavery with mass incarceration, the Reagan drug laws, and things of those nature. So you have to, when we talk about getting reparations, we're not talking about just for slavery or housing authority. We want it for all of that. We want all of that because that's a lot of years that we suffered and we're still suffering from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think that the definition I think is on point. What you guys are talking about, making amends, whether it's through money or other sources of value, to make amends to a people who were wronged. I think that I'm probably going to lie closer to you, Tyrell and Joel. I believe, yes, something needs to be done. My main thing is really understanding. I know there was a question posed about where's that money going to come from? And, we see in history that they were able to find money, for, I think it was the Japanese who were in the camps, those concentration camps.
Concentration camps, yeah. From the
a lot of people talk about the Holocaust. Yeah. My thing that because the U.S. still dishes out money for that, and I will say that yes, it is easier because of the records. There's better records. There were situations in the Holocaust where people Jewish people put their money in banks, and after the war, these people didn't want to give them their money back. So there's a easier pathway to get them their money back and make amends in that way. I think that in order to make amends, it has to be something creative. I think it was something like, I saw a number that it would cost 500 billion to 17 trillion to be able to do it with just finances. And I'm just like, man, what does that even look like? So if y'all could speak to that, I would love to engage in that from that aspect. I'd also like to hear Niko, because I think he's gonna come up with some crazy spin. Before we move on to that, tread lightly.
Roger, I think asking me to tread lightly is all but entirely fruitless. You know what I'm about. No, let me stop. But yeah, no, I'm for the moment, I'm just listening. I'm hearing perspectives, but rest assured, I will have much to input to this topic.
We need some pushback. Go ahead and give us the pushback. We need that right now. Let's dive deep into the fire. You're only here for less than an hour. Let's dive into the fire.
Okay, thank you for the invite. Dive into the fire type person I am, certainly. Okay, so first off, let's can I get a more concrete definition of reparations?
Sure. Okay, that's a good question.
Just so I know what exactly I'm.
So usually when people talk about reparations, it's like it's some sort of
compensation.
Sort of compensation, usually in the form of money, giving to descendants of slaves, to rectify what happened with the American slave trade.
Just to make it really quick, the Google definition just says the act or process of making amends for a wrong.
Yeah. So, and usually when people talk about that, they talk about in regard to slavery, and like a really, I guess a really simplistic solution. I think also silly one is just write a check to all the Black people.
Sure.
So most people aren't supporting anything like that.
Yep.
I've heard examples from scholarships, and so sort of incentives for public school systems, stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't. Honestly, I don't think throwing money at a problem is going to be able to fix it, because like a lot of the issues.
Yes, it seldom does.
Yeah, a lot of the issues seems to be like in sort of it'll be inside the institution itself. Like it's systemic, right? The first, like when I was talking about the public schools, like it's no accident that it's mostly Blacks and Latinos that get the worst school systems. Yeah. That didn't happen by chance. Like, as the public schools are funded by property taxes, and the areas with the least amount of wealthy property, they're going to get the worst schools. And why did that happen? Well, it's because there was a group of people that were completely prohibited from taking part in a lot of the New Deal programs that benefited other Americans.
I'm glad you brought up property, because that segues right into my interpretation of as far as reparations. We do know that there was a promise, there was an amount of property when we go back to the 40 acres and a mule, and as well as other property that was promised to slaves once they were freed in the South. I think it was upwards to like 400 million acres or something like that, or 400,000 acres. I don't know the exact number that was rescinded or taken away by President. Which president was that? I think who came after Lincoln? Was it Andrew?
Ulysses Grant.
Yeah, whoever came after Lincoln, after Lincoln promised them that land, the next president that came in after Lincoln was assassinated, took that away. You know what I mean? So it was a debt that was already going to be paid by the United States government to a certain group of people who were the descendants of slaves that never got paid. You know what I mean? Or they wasn't given that opportunity. Even when and even the part of the land that was given the opportunity, it was taken back from them because they let a lot of settlers from the northern come and overbid them for that property. So when we talk about reparations, we're talking about a debt. We're talking about a debt that is owed to the descendants of the people who were robbed of their culture, their land, their whole being. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I would also like to add to the conversation. Although I know that throwing money at a problem without an infrastructure or plan is it may not work, but you got to understand that they've done it. In the past, they've done it. Like when you look at the way the U.S. has advocated for Jewish people and thrown money. Well, I won't say throw money. They deserve that. I believe it's just, right? I'm not gonna diminish that. So let me just backtrack. But it's been done before. So why has it? There was a bill they've been trying to push in Congress for 30 years now, right? Way over 30 years now. Why is it so difficult to get movement in the right direction? Even churches, they have began to address their role that they played in slavery. Institutions have beginning to address the roles that they've played in slavery. So there's an element that I believe these are Black people. There is an element of racism here that is institutional racism that's affecting us not being able to move forward and get to where we need to go. Because like I said, they've been able to do it before, right? So I just wanted to point that out before we move on. It was in response to something Joel said that, it's not wise, but, let's be creative. Let's think outside the box because it's been done before.
Just to add to that real quick, when y'all say that you don't think it could be solved with just pushing money out there and just giving people money. But in fact, it's been proven that when the Germans paid the Jews, when the Germans gave reparations to the Jews, it was all monetary. When the reparations was given to the indigenous people from the United States, it was in land and money. You know what I mean? And we've seen what it done to those communities in order to raise those communities, you know what I mean, as far as with the wealth gap that we're suffering from. You understand what I'm saying? So you can't say if the right plan is put into place, if you just throw money to everybody, that will give us the opportunity to create our own, and not everybody, because not everybody is made to have a certain amount of money, but that will generally, the people with like minds, like I think we all have like minds, that will give us the opportunity to create our own. You understand what I'm saying? Which we never had the opportunity to do before.
No, I don't want to be pedantic here, but I will point out that as far as reparations for Native Americans, the wealth gap and the total, indigenous people, Native Americans, I mean, whatever term you prefer, it by no means has solved the problem of debt inequality or racial inequality between colonialist and indigenous peoples. And as a matter of fact, you would say, if you look back on the total number of indigenous peoples prior to colonization, the number was astronomical compared to the minute, less than 5% of remaining indigenous people to the area, which is now the United States. So throwing money at it, I mean, to me, at least on that particular point, would be, I don't think there's any amount of money or land that could fix the problem, and I think that may be where
You're right.
Triboulet and others may have the idea of just throwing money at it's not going to fix it, because there's no way we can rebuild that population to where it was before. There's not enough land because all of the land belonged to the indigenous people before. There's not enough money because no amount of money is going to bring back the dead family members of the people that were atrociously murdered and relocated, et cetera, et cetera. Not to make light of it, it's just that I don't think there's a number that anyone could come up with, and I would probably wager the same if I pressed anyone on the screen to give me a number, in which if I said, here's the number, you can make up any number you want, what would make a solid reparation in a dollar amount for slavery? I think you would probably think about it a while, and you say, I don't think there is an amount. And I think that may be part of the problem. Is that, let's say hypothetically, I was able to push out, $18 billion and distribute it to every African American in the United States. Okay? And I would give it out an equal amount to every African American in the United States. Would you say that would then, reparations, end of conversation? Or would you say that a conversation still needs to be had?
No, I'm not in agreement that just throwing money at it will solve the problem. I'm in agreement that would make things a lot better as far as with tightening the wealth gap that we have in the United States and all across the world. You understand what I'm saying? So
yeah, I agree with that. I just wanted to make sure we're on the...
That would mean just throwing money at it will just solve the problem itself. But that is part of the problem. I'm talking money, I'm talking land, I'm talking education, I'm talking the whole nine to give us the ability to rebuild what was taken from us or what we never had the chance or the opportunity to do. So you can't really say, these are all projections. Everything that you do is just projections. You can never say what throwing money at can't solve. You understand what I'm saying? We don't, us as a people don't know what it is to be wealthy, or us as a people don't know what it is to be middle class. You understand what I'm saying? So if we were to be able to get that experience, you don't know what anybody to do with the experience that they never had. We're assuming that everybody's going to take that experience and just and go buy Jordans and go buy Cadillacs and things of that nature. Those are all assumptions that come from, the people that are against, fixing the issue.
Yeah, I would.
I work in the realm of education and higher education, and I guess the reason why I brought that up was, what posture or tone are we having? Are we starting these conversations with? Whenever you look at equity, right? Solutions to equity problems, and then just equity mindedness. You cannot have a deficit mindset. In education, for instance, one thing, you're limiting students by putting these ideas, these deficit minded ideas that, they came from an under-resourced school. They have these obstacles. There's this. We have to be move away from a deficit mindset to reach equity, because there's so much strength that comes out of people who are working, are overcoming difficult situations. In education, you see the resiliency, you see the creativity because of their learned experiences. There's so much power that us in the educational field, we have to check ourselves and realize, are we limiting our students from being successful? Or is the idea, are we going to do whatever it takes to get them where they deserve to be, right? Because there's been situations in our society that has brought them here. It's not their fault. So how are we going to find ways to get them to where they need to be? So that's the kind of the posture that I like to have in situations like this. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to point out, but as far as money, I think the tone also needs to be that something is owed to these people. And just so you guys know, I'm not somebody who would be eligible for this money. I'm not from America, right? But in this injustice, what'd you say?
I said I am. Look, born and raised there, brother Black is there.
Go ahead, get your check.
Look,
I feel like people watching maybe thinking
I want
because
to hear Niko's take on it. By the
yeah,
way,
no, that's what I wanted as well.
By the way, I don't think my name is right on here because I heard someone call me Terrell.
Yeah,
but my name is Chris. But I want to hear Niko's perspective on things because I want to hear.
I'm gonna chime in. I'm gonna chime in right after Roger. I want you to finish what you were saying, then I'll chime in right afterwards.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem.
You were saying that these people are owed something, and you wouldn't be a recipient, and so that's why I made the joke.
Oh, gotcha. So there's something owed, right? When there's an injustice done, and we live in a society where we see the effects of racism today. There's something owed. What it is, that's what we're discussing today. What type of support? That's what we're discussing. There needs to be an action done to make amends. That's reparations. And I think the UN. So don't. I don't know if I should say this, but I don't know the specific words and everything. But the UN did basically an analysis of U.S.'s responses to slavery, and it was they saw it as despicable. It was embarrassing the strides that the U.S. have gone to make amends. It's just they've done a poor job. When you look at places like Germany, who's put in I think it was at least 60 billion. It could be more, but at least 60 billion in reparations to Holocaust survivors. And I know it's you could say that it's easier, but something needs to be done. The what is this thing called? This I'm almost done. There was I want to quote the thing that they are still trying to figure out. There's a
you talking about the HR40 or something like that?
HR40.
HR40, yeah.
The HR40
commission.
That is just to start investigating this issue.
Yeah.
That's a vote to start investigating.
Yeah,
right. We can't even have a discussion, right? So that's what I'm talking. What is kind of frustrating. Something is owed. An amend needs to be done. Something needs to be done. All right. So go ahead, Niko. I really want to hear what you got to say.
Man, don't be too excited. It's not that. But okay. So let me start off by saying I appreciate all y'all input. I love having these conversations because I also love to learn. It's one of my favorite things to do on the planet. Okay. So idealistically, when it comes to reparations, I think the idea or the concept is, I don't want to say is good, but I'll say from my perspective, it's not bad. I'm not against it. I don't find myself jarred back by the mention of it. Even when you start to explain what it would entail, how it would be implemented, not that we have a solid solution, but just some ideas, I don't find immediate pushback with it to say absolutely not. And that's because of some of the things that Roger kind of said, that indeed there may be something that is owed to these people being, well, specifically for this conversation in this context, it would be African Americans who are descendants of former slaves. So for me to say that it's possible that these people are owed something, I think that's plausible, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. The problem I have with reparations as an idea, and more importantly as or in the implementation stage, is sort of what was stated right at the beginning of this conversation, is how is that to be done? And I think that oftentimes in these conversations, obviously there's steps. It's like, first, can we have the conversation? And kind of like you mentioned HR40. Okay, can we and should we have the conversation? From my perspective, absolutely. Very seldom are there conversations. I think certain things are more or less preposterous, but very seldom is something so preposterous that we can't at least talk about it, right? That we can't at least approach it. And I'm not just talking about individuals like we're doing right now, but at the government level, right? Can we get funding to launch an investigation to see, if we can track down to some reasonable degree, who all are affected by not receiving what was quote unquote owed. You talk about 40 acres and a mule. Can we track down to some degree who all is owed? And then and then the next step is, okay, can we begin some form of implementation, right? So I'm okay with having that conversation. However, the implementation stage is so, in my opinion, is so problematic that the conversation is almost not worth having. Almost. And here's why I say that. Because I think and you can start wherever you want, but if you start with, okay, how are we going to pull this off? How are we going to do this in a reasonably fair way? I think you run into a seemingly unending list of impossibilities, right? Who receives what? What is the purpose? Are we measuring outcome, or are we just slapping a Band-Aid on something? Are we taking the multivariate reality of the situation of every African American, right? Like whatever situation you're in is multivariate. Certainly slavery played a role. What role did it play? How much privilege do you have as a Black person compared to other Black people? How much privilege do you have as a Black person compared to other white people? And I think that because the list of impossibilities is just so, it's seemingly, and obviously you can all correct me if you think I'm wrong, which I'm sure some of you will, but the list of impossibilities just seems so long and so great that it's like, where are we going with this? Who receives what? How much do they receive? Person A receives $5,000 and a percentage of land. Person B receives $1,000 and no land. Like, how do we map this out? How does this even come to fruition, right? And I think that's where I take great issue with it, because I don't think that there's there seems to be no direction where we could go that actually makes sense. Also, and I'll take it a step further. So that's just on the recipient side, right? On the benefactor side, right? And I understand you say, okay, these people are owed something. Fair enough, okay? But who is paying what they're paying, right? And you say, okay, like Roger said earlier, the government or governments around the world have found a way, have found money. And one of the ideas that I really like to drive home in conversations with people about stuff like this, like the federal government has a grand total of $0.00 to their name. They don't own a thing. Any money that they dish out or give is not from them. They don't have money. They have the taxes of their people. They have, there's commerce, there's all sorts of ways, but they don't have money. Give us all the money. What money? It's not coming from the government. It's coming from the people to other people. So I think, and when you look at it from that standpoint, then you're like, okay, who all are paying for it? I mean, if we're talking to the tune of 5, 10, 15, $20 billion, which I think at this point, if we'd almost have to be, where's the money coming from? Who is paying it? And then
it will come from taxpayers. But so how about this? So, okay, so when is your objections that the people who would pay, like current United States citizens, right, current taxpayers, they didn't own any slaves, so why should they have to pay for it?
That's a belief that I agree with, but I think it's wider than that. Yeah.
So let's say this. Let's say there's a fire down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Fire truck is running to try to get the fire. And the guy is kind of driving recklessly. And on the way to the fire, he runs over my leg, breaks it, right? So I sue the city. The city owes me money, right?
Yes.
So the residents of the city, they weren't driving the fire truck. They had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
They never drove a fire truck in their life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I sue the city, right, it's the taxpayers that's
Right.
going to have to pay for it, right?
Right.
So it seems like to me, to that objection, to say that reparations shouldn't be paid because there's no one alive today that owned slaves, that would also be an objection to, I guess, like all sovereign immunity. Like no city should ever, or any sort of body that is paid for by taxpayers should ever allowed to be sued.
Okay.
Right? When the agent of the state does something, or when the state does something, now that state can be sued and have to rectify that wrong.
Mhm.
Let me ask a question to add on to you saying the federal government. I just want to add to this point real quick. You saying the federal government owns no money. They have no money.
Correct.
Are you aware that the federal government has 240 million, or no, I think it's 640 million acres of land? So when we talk about reparations being paid, myself, I'm not just talking about money. I'm not just talking about throwing money at it.
Mhm.
I'm talking about land. I'm talking about things that can appreciate. I'm talking about other means. I'm talking about a system. You can't say that a system can't be constructed. We have all kinds of systems that's in place. We have the stock market system. We have the government system itself. They vote on laws every single day. We have the greatest minds in the world. You keep telling me that the greatest minds in the world couldn't get together and construct a system the same way they constructed the system. The same way they constructed the system of systematic racism. Because that wasn't something that they just said, okay, we're going to do this. They knew projections down the line that all the things that they put in place, what it was going to do, all the way down the line up until the present day, which is still doing. It's documented. It's documented.
Yeah, no, perhaps. So.
It's documented. It's in the Constitution.
Okay.
You can read it right there if you want to see
I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying perhaps. Continue.
One time that it's impossible or implausible that it can't happen. It can happen. Everything that we know to this day, it was told that it couldn't happen. But if we're not even going to sit down and have the conversation about it and implement a commission to take care of it, and you saying they have no money, but they have 600 million acres of land, you understand? That's just sitting there, that's just waiting to be developed or anything like that. We have all kinds of ways of making it happen.
So
we just don't want to make it happen because in order to give, we don't want to tighten that wealth gap. In order for somebody to be rich, somebody has to be poor. You understand what I'm saying?
The wealth gap between who?
Between I don't want to get racy here, but between
no, be candid.
Listen.
It's okay. Everyone knows I'm white. I don't mind.
Listen. I'm gonna give you an example of the wealth gap. Okay. I live in Denton, Maryland. I live in Caroline County. I don't know who may be familiar to that. It's about an hour from Ocean City, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure y'all all been to Ocean City at one point in time, Maryland.
Yep.
I live in Denton, right? Where I live at, I live on maybe like 2.5 acres of land, right? Every day while I'm working, and I drive in every county in Maryland almost for work. You understand what I'm saying? I drive past thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of farmland, crops, things of that nature. You understand what I'm saying? That's what I mean by the wealth gap. Who you think owns all that land?
Can I put something in perspective for you for fun?
When I'm looking
who do you think owns all that land?
Exactly. When I'm looking at the people that's tilling those horses and the Amish and all of and everybody, I don't see people of my color that own their land. Now we're talking about if I'm able to pass that down and pass that down and pass that down from generation to generation, and the people, and black people don't have that. That's what I mean. I mean,
can I put something in perspective for you?
Go ahead.
So fun fact: the top richest 100 people in the world have more money than everyone else in the world combined.
That's great.
So when you're talking about wealth gap, are you talking about between your wealth gap and my wealth gap? Because I'd wager that I grew up like
I'm talking about the statistics that say the average black family makes $800,000 less than the average white family in America. When I say wealth gap, that's what I'm talking about. If you take all the middle class, that's what I'm talking about when I say wealth gap. That is a fact. That's the statistics.
Well, that's talking about $800,000 less.
Yes.
I mean, the average family's not bringing in $800,000.
It's probably lifetime.
Okay, maybe lower life. Maybe.
But
If it helps, I mean, like as of 2021, statistically in the United States, white people under the poverty line was about 14%. Black people under the poverty line was about 23%.
Yeah, but how much of the percentage do black people make up of the total people by population in America? You have to factor that in. You have to factor that in.
I was
statistically, it says there are
Well,
more
when you get
white
the
people.
percentage, that's automatic.
Statistically, it says more white people are on welfare, correct? But most people will believe that it's more black people that's on welfare. Statistically, there's more white people on welfare because there's more white people. Because there's more white people. I mean,
I don't think people who have basic education of the welfare system and a basic understanding of who's on welfare thinks that it's more black people. I think certainly there's maybe some stereotypes floating around there, most assuredly, but
that's the perception. That's the consensual perception.
If there's a higher number, of white people, but there's a higher percentage of blacks.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
That's the way it is. But
so let me just add to so by no means am I stating that that black people in America were not wronged at a certain point in time, and that certain wrongdoings or being wrong continued on and even still continues in various degrees to this day. I'm not claiming that. And I don't think that reparations, however we approach the conversation or implement them, I don't think that reparations, again, are necessarily inherently bad or unproductive or whatever the case may be, whatever negative term you might toss onto it. What I think is that, and again, I'm not I would not consider myself a reparations expert, or I don't know what the term would be. I can't think of the term I'm thinking of. But either way, I don't consider myself an expert or even someone who is just well studied in that regard. But from my layman's understanding of the possibility of reparations, that's where I think even at my level of understanding, it seems like, okay, we can have this conversation, but where is this going? It seems like we're running into a dead end. And are we potentially, how much resources are we going to spend, or are we talking about spending? Perhaps I haven't read HR 40, but I don't know what the language in that is, but to launch an investigation into whether or not reparations essentially can be done. What type of resources are we expending to do that? And what type of resources will we need to expend to essentially satisfy that approach? And then, at what point, whose conclusion are we going to accept? Because say an investigation is launched and we come to a point where we say this is impossible and ought not to be done. Is the conversation then over? Are you approaching, and I'm not speaking to anybody specifically, but are you approaching the conversation that something needs to be done regardless of how we do it? Something needs to be done, right? And so I just think it's an interesting conversation. I do like to have it, but I don't know where it's going. I don't see how it could be doable.
What are the problems? Because like going back to what Joel said, you can start to be able to get anything done. You could start at investigating injustices.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm pausing on this point, but like the fact that you got to decide whether or not a situation like this is worth in investigating is just ridiculous, because they should be willing to put the money needed to at least start the investigation and at least say, all right, we tried, right? We worked at it. And then, so going back to what I was saying, like Joe started mentioning kind of on a smaller scale, like Wells Fargo, I think they owned hundreds of slaves. They used slaves for people would get loans by giving Wells Fargo slaves and all these things. maybe there needs to be some type of tax for companies that utilize slaves to go towards this fund that's going to be used to give back to this community. So my thing is that it's not something that is this nonsensical fairy tale, child's, it's crazy. We shouldn't even have this conversation. I disagree. The conversation needs to be had simply because, as you even said, there were injustices done, and if there's injustices done, if we actually believe in justice, and if you're a Christian, righteousness, because righteousness and justice go hand in hand, there needs to be some action done. The conversation needs to begin. It needs to be started. And because it may be too much, start the conversation. If another thing, like, this is just crazy to me, because in 2015, I don't know if this is a reparation, but in 2015, the UK just finished paying off their debt that went to abolish slavery. Like, I don't even care how long it takes to pay it off, right? There needs to be something done. Yes, it's going to come from taxpayers. Now, are Black people going to, African Americans going to be, I don't know why I did the air quotes, I'm sorry. Are African Americans going to have to pay taxes on this? I don't know, but and you said, who's going to do this? Niko, hire some experts. The Congress they'll work together, these people, and, I'm not an I'm layman's terms, using layman's terms, hire experts who are knowledgeable, right? And I think that
experts, just to be clear, hire experts to do what?
Hire experts that are knowledgeable at, I guess we would need investigators. We would need economics professionals. We would need, financial planners. Find people who are experts. You guys are hired to make these hard decisions. Hire experts. Do what you're supposed to do. Hire experts to investigate. Professionals who've been doing this for a long time.
To right? Investigate that. I'm almost on board with. I'm almost on board with that.
Almost.
Yeah, almost.
Niko will never accept. He will never, accept defeat in any. If something looks like or
I don't even understand why it needs to be an
investigation, he will never concede fully.
Roger, I started my soliloquy with saying that
nobody cares about that. Play with words? That's foolish.
I play with words. I'm being serious. Unbelievable. It wasn't a play with words. I'm being serious. I started out my whole thing that when I started speaking today, the first thing I said was, I'm okay with us opening this and I specifically said, not just among peers like us. I said at the government level. I said officially, formally, I said, thank you very much. So Niko will never concede, even when he is wrong. That's because I don't negotiate with terrorists.
If the question, if the question is how do we pay it back and who's going to pay it, we can pay it the same way we pay everything. We paid the same way we paid the PPP loans, the same way we paid the government bailouts, the same way we pay to give aid to other countries when other countries go through crisis, the same way FEMA is paid to do the things that they do. We can find money. We have reserves. We have gas reserves. We have oil reserves. We have all kinds of money. There's all kinds of money in America and ways to get it paid. You know what I mean? That is not even the question. The question is, and I frankly don't see why the reason for an investigation is because all the proof is, as they say, the proof is in the pudding, whatever that means. That's just the funny thing to say when it comes to that situation. It's no need. Like I said, it all boils down to, in order for the wealthy to stay wealthy, someone has to be poor. And who are we going to choose to be poor? Because everybody else, the indigenous people, the Japanese, the Jews for the Holocaust, everyone else that has been wronged has been reparations made. They have, with us, they may have just pulled the knife out. Yeah, you pull the knife out slowly, very, very slowly. You pull the knife out, but nothing has been made to heal the wounds. Affirmative action, all of that, the No Child Left Behind, all of that crazy mess. None of that has worked. That has been just little things to put blinds on your eyes. None of that has worked. In order to do it, we have to do something to.
So I mean, even just
tighten the wealth gap. We have to tighten up the wealth gap. We have to tighten the land gap, because if we tighten the land gap, and we know that's the most precious commodity on earth is land. You know what I mean? And the disparity, the discrepancy between land for Black people and for white people is so great and so enormous that we never be able to catch up.
Let me ask you a question.
Anything that they implemented.
Let me ask you a question, because second ago you mentioned a couple programs and you almost criticized them and insulted those programs as, you know, affirmative action being one of them, No Child Left Behind. And are you if you're stating that those didn't work, somehow in whatever backing or education went behind implementing those plans and they didn't work, yet somehow reparations is just gonna work, even though it'll be multitudes times bigger than No Child Left Behind and affirmative action.
Let me be clear. Let me be clear. Those things won't work. Yeah, those won't work because they were never made to work. They were never implemented to work. Those were just things, like I said, those were blinders to put on your eyes to make it think like something was going to happen.
Blind from,
well, affirmative action works for white women, for other minorities. So affirmative action is actually what actually helped, you know, white women have a seat at the table. You know, Asians benefited from it, and these people don't like to admit it, but you know, they wouldn't be where they were today without it. So it did work, but there needs to be, like I said, going back to professionals, looking at ways we can equitably assist these students. And then you go back to what's going on now in higher ed with you know, the admissions process, and you know, and them thinking that by now we would be ready to, we wouldn't need these extra things to get students into these institutions. It's because people aren't willing to do the work, right? They're playing with money. People aren't willing to actually get these experts in place to create these plans. They just, you know, no one really cares about people of color at the end of the day.
I think that's part of the biggest problem, is that even if let's say hypothetically the money was thrown at experts to do something or to research it, do you think in the end that people are willing to take the necessary steps to really try to rectify the atrocity of slavery? Because I don't. I'm not saying I don't think that there deserves to be some recompense or that there's not a debt that is owed. It's just that I don't see the feasibility of getting 350 million Americans on board with any one subject, especially something that a majority of those people, yeah. So it's just, you know,
it's a conversation of if it should be done. At the end of the day, I don't think people do not like giving up their privilege. People do not like, especially giving up their privilege to Black people. You know, white people especially. You know, they can give up their privilege to Jewish people, to others. But it's an issue of care, because it's something that should be done. Now, let's put some intelligent people in place to at least structure these programs, because there's so many programs that have been successful. When you actually look at resiliency, when you actually look at what works, you can get to where you want to be. When you look at the success rates of charter schools or these underprivileged programs that actually work, let's focus on that. And you know what? Let's hire the people who constructed those programs, right? let's actually bring in these people. But then we go back to, at the end of the day, they don't care, right? These people don't care. So for me, it's about being an influence where you are to bring about change. And the fact that they don't care doesn't mean that you give up, right? Because many years ago, you know, there were black people who did not give up. There were white people who did not give up, who actually cared. So maybe, you know, for my kids, you know, they may, something may change, or their kids, something may change. So you don't give up. So that's why we continue to have the conversations, even though I don't believe that there's, you know, right in the today where we live, it's not going to happen. But that's why we continue to have the conversation.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to switch gears a little bit if I can. There's a couple comments, and I'm going to try to go round robin. I'll start with Triboulet and end with Roger. The first question, if you could formulate maybe a 1 or 2 sentence response to both the comments on the screen. I'll read them in case you can't, because I have them on a larger screen in front of me. And then for the second comment, I'll start with Roger and end with Triboulet. Just kind of get your thoughts on what they're saying, and if you agree, disagree. So, Triboulet, I'm going to start with you in the first comment. It says, reparations are not going to fix the issue. There needs to be systems in place to help build up the inner cities. More funding to public schools, more money to the infrastructure, build up the cities, more jobs brought into these places. But honestly, what needs to happen is those in charge need to admit there's such a thing as systematic racism, and that over the course of 60 years, they destroyed the inner cities and black families and homes. Thoughts, response, reaction? You're muted. I can't hear you.
So sorry, I was going to say that I think what he described in the first paragraph, like the first couple of sentences, more funding to public schools, more jobs, money invested in infrastructure. I mean, like, that's what I would like to see reparations come in the form of.
Okay, fair enough. Niko, if I could get your response.
Yeah,
don't worry, I'm coming around to you, Roger.
Sorry.
Yes, I think that that sounds good. I mean, I think that when you look at inner cities across America, they are the list of issues is extensive, and it's really common in inner cities. Poverty and obviously the taxes that go to build up the school systems obviously pale in comparison to their suburban counterparts. So I think, yeah, I'd say that's a good idea. Again, the question is how do we do that? How do we execute that as a plan? But I think to approach with, yes, that's something that needs to be done as far as building up our inner cities and our schooling, certainly, I'd say.
All right, King, your turn.
Let me hear the comment again real quick.
So really long. It says reparations aren't going to fix the issue. We need to have systems in place to build up inner cities, funding to the public schools, more money to infrastructure to build up cities, more jobs brought into these places. What needs to happen is those in charge need to admit there's a such thing as systematic racism, and that over the course of 60 years, they have destroyed the inner cities and the black families and homes.
I kind of agree with some of that. I do still believe there needs to be some type of monetary reparation, or as well as land. I think just throwing money in, as far as with education, we can even up the amount of money that's. Hold on, sorry. Even up the amount of money that's given to the school system. We can start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. You know, it has to start somewhere. We have some people that's in power that admitted that there's systematic racism. They know that it exists because they benefit from it. So they know it exists. They're not going to admit it as far as anything, because it will admit something that means you have to actually do something to fix it. You know what I mean? And that's just not going to happen no time soon. That's why that's the reason why they won't even talk about getting the commission together to investigate it.
All right, fair enough. Roger, we're going to move on to you, and then I'll have you respond first to the second comment, and then we're going to try to make it back to Niko before he has to get away. Only got a couple minutes left.
Okay, so based off the definition, he may not have been here when we defined reparation, but that is what we defined reparation as. That was one of the forms. Maybe he's meaning just only money. That is not what anyone here has discussed. Or I think I've just been focused on. Mm-hmm. But I also want to say be willing to throw money at the situation because you've done it in the past. So why aren't people that look like me worthy enough for you to throw money and start the investigation and lose money, you know, for the injustices that you have done, the injustices that you have admittedly done. So it's an issue of like I said, compassion, care, and an issue of, are these people willing to give up their privilege? But
yeah, fair enough. All right, I'm going to read the second one real quick. I'll start with you, Roger. We're going to go back in reverse order. Hopefully we can get Niko in before he has to dip out. The second comment says, regarding education, get rid of private schools. And then it says, healthcare equality is impossible due to gentrification. What are your thoughts on that, Roger?
Oof. Get rid of private schools. And they said healthcare is
equality is impossible due to gentrification.
Healthcare equality is currently impossible, like I said, because of not because of gentrification, but because of institutional racism. If we could educate our healthcare professionals to care about Black women, pregnant Black moms, you know, they would be able to show more compassion as within the bedside manner, and Black women wouldn't be dying at such high rates. You know, it's about education. It's not always about putting Black people in positions of power, but educating white people the correct way and teaching people compassion. That's a big trend right now in healthcare and in the educational fields. And hopefully that shows a positive effect. But as far as the first question, that's too, sorry, I don't have enough time to discuss that. I don't really get it.
Fair enough. Hey, Niko, I know you have to go. Do you want to give a comment on that? Do you need to wrap up real quick before you head out?
Yeah, I'll give a comment on it, but I'll also hear everyone else's response to this particular, the second comment, and then I'll head out after everybody kind of goes around, and then we can close as far as I'm concerned.
Awesome.
But I'll just say that as far as ending private schools, I don't agree. I think it's an extensive discussion. There's a lot that would go into that discussion, but just a very quick, just at face value, get rid of private schools? No. I think that private schools are in place for a reason. I don't necessarily think that the existence of private schools are helpful to the dilemma with public schools. I don't think that at all. But I think that here in America, that's a right. You can open a school, you can offer it on a tuition basis, and those who can pay the tuition, and their students go to that school. I think that private schools should be available to those who wish to utilize them, regardless of whether or not we figure out the issue with public schools. But I do think public schools in general, I'm speaking very generically, they need more, is the best way I can put it. And then what was the other part to that question?
Healthcare equality is impossible due to gentrification.
Yes. So I certainly don't think healthcare equality is impossible. Perhaps gentrification makes it a lot more difficult. But even gentrification, I hesitate to just throw that word out in the middle of a sentence without both defining it and speaking on what, if I think it is happening and how it's happening and if it's wrong, right? Because, I just very loosely, if an area, for example, is run down and not in good shape, and some of the buildings or houses are for sale, and then I or someone else as a developer say, great opportunity, purchase it up, renovate it or what have you, and then allow people to move into there who fit the qualifications of the tenants I'd like to have, whether that be business tenants or residential tenants or whatever you do with the area. Is that fundamentally wrong at all? Is there an issue with that? It's like, well, you're breaking up this community. It's like, perhaps, but welcome to America, because and I think the real estate developers who are white compared to real estate developers who are Black, there's a lot more white real estate developers, but I know plenty of Black ones as well. And I plan to be one day. And so make no mistake, I will take actions that can be categorized as gentrification. So is it wrong? Who knows? But I know that house costs $15,000 and it's run down, and I'm going to build $1 million building there with, 12 tenants, whatever. So, and that's very, very, very loose kind of look at gentrification. So, but anyway, so back to healthcare. No, I don't think it's impossible. Certainly maybe made more difficult. I think that kind of like how Roger said, I think when there are instances that we have data on injustices in healthcare, and one that I've looked into more extensively than others is pregnant Black women, because I have 2 kids. One of my children's mothers was white, the other one was Black. So and she was pregnant recently. My daughter is a year and a half old. So when, I'll be honest, when her mother was pregnant, I was nervous. I'm like, okay, how is this going to go? Are we receiving the proper medical treatment? Are we receiving everything that we can receive to make sure mom stays healthy and baby stays healthy? From my perspective, I think we absolutely were. I feel that we were taken tremendous care of. Even the what are they called? Neonatal nurses. They were fantastic. Only one was not white. But I thought they were all fantastic. So, and even the delivery doctor, well, she wasn't white. She was Middle Eastern. But anyhow,
I'm just curious. Did you have a doula?
Sorry.
Did Flo have a doula?
Did you have a doula?
Flo did not have a doula. No. The closest person to her doula was Mirage, and the little pointers and stuff Mirage gave. But no, she did not have a doula. We did discuss her having a doula, but we never actually went forward with anybody. So I think that, but yeah, I think, and that's where I really think that, I think if we approach any issue and say, okay, what is happening objectively, right? Like, is there data that suggests that Black women are at risk when pregnant, more so than their white counterparts? If the answer is yes, then something's got to be done, period. And I view that across the board from a healthcare perspective. But yeah, so that's kind of my take on it.
Awesome. King, I don't want you to feel like I skipped over you. I just wanted to make sure we're before Niko.
No, we're good. We're good.
So if you want to take off, it's your turn now. Regarding education, get rid of private schools. Healthcare equality is impossible due to gentrification. What are your thoughts?
As far as private schools, I'm actually on the side that I think we should have more private schools. You know what I mean? I think that if the finances is available, we should be able to have people that can open up schools within their neighborhoods to teach the children that they're familiar with. You understand what I'm saying? I do know that when I moved to a different area, I kind of grew up in DC, but when I moved to another area, I wasn't used to being around. I wasn't used to having white teachers. Let me say that. You know what I'm saying? And the white teachers and counselors and things of that nature weren't familiar with the area that I came from. They don't know the trauma that I've been through, so they didn't know how to deal with me in a class setting that I wasn't used to. You understand what I'm saying? So I think we should have more private schools in neighborhoods that know the children, where everyone can grow together and you can get better education and you can teach the curriculum that's needed for that particular neighborhood or for that particular area. You understand what I'm saying? As far as gentrification and healthcare, I'm not sure of how that correlates or how that works in it, because again, I grew up in DC and we had hospitals and clinics everywhere, and I thought that our healthcare, we had regular checkups, regular dentist appointments, and things of that nature. So I'm not sure how that correlates as far as with reparations or anything like that. Maybe one of y'all can clear that up for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Triboulet, you want to add anything to either of those statements?
Sure. I think he has the opposite solution that I would say. So regarding education, like getting rid of private schools, no, get rid of public schools. Like public schools is one of the things that is promoting the systemic racism. Like I said, they're bad because the funding is based off of property taxes, and you have a school system. They're able to they're going to be able to compete better. It's not going to be based off of the money that they're getting for the project that they're living in. So no, get rid of public schools if you're going to get rid of anything. Private schools is it's the way out. It's the way out of these really bad schools.
Yeah.
As far as healthcare equality, I'm not even sure how that's possible. The people with the most money are the ones that's going to get the best doctors, just like the ones with the most money get the best cars and the best homes. You're also going to have the best, medical professionals available to. I mean, there's just how it works. I mean, like I work
not for black mothers, but sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's unfortunate that that's sometimes what we see in healthcare, it seems to be like some racist practices. So I'm opposed to that. But even if everybody was the same race, healthcare equality is, to me, I just don't see how that's a thing. Doctors, like medical professionals, they're going to vary in their skills, and the ones who are the best they're going to go to the ones who are going to pay the most, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Now that you kind of mention it, I do agree with that. I was more so referring to because healthcare. Most Americans are not paying for their healthcare needs out of pocket. So,
we can afford to.
I think that may be where the question was stemming from. I don't know. I don't know what it has to do with reparations per se, but it seems like maybe it was more stemming from, maybe access in general to healthcare, or more like a socialized healthcare, if you will, plan. So just something like basic checkups and routine health, everyone should have the same access to, no matter your race. I mean, at least that's where I would.
Yeah, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be the same quality.
I don't. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's the same quality. But
working at Med Express, it's not going to happen.
Right, but if somebody walks into a hospital, no matter the race, they should get the same quality from the same doctor. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If they see HMO on that insurance paper, you're not getting the same quality of nothing. I guarantee
they ain't got no insurance. That don't matter. I ain't got none. I walk in the door, they tell me to leave.
Well, what you can set a minimum baseline of quality.
Well, I think that may be where they're going. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to interpret what the commenter said. I don't know. They didn't expand upon it. I'm just saying, like, if I walked in and everybody else on the screen walked in and we all had the same problem, we should all get treated with the same level of care and respect. If we all walked into the same hospital, no matter what color we are, no matter how much money we have.
Certainly.
I don't want to expand upon. I don't know what Miguel will say. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I want to go back to Niko real quick, because I know you're the most time crunched. Is there anything you wanted to add? Anything you wanted to have as a comment? And then I'll of course reach back out to King and to Roger, make sure your time is respected. And if we want to continue on with the conversation, we can. But Niko, I know you're most pressed for time, so.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'll just kind of end. Lastly, I'll just commend all of you for approaching this conversation, man. I think that more of this needs to happen, and kind of like I alluded to, I have nothing to announce right now, but kind of how I alluded to earlier, I certainly plan to jump headfirst into sort of the grand discussion, the national discussion on all these things and a whole breadth of other topics. So I commend you all for being willing to be here and have the discussion and many more. So thank you guys. It's been a real joy. The one last question I do have for everybody, if we can just kind of go round robin and everybody can answer, what is a woman? No, just kidding.
Hey.
No, just kidding. I'm joking.
Hey, man. Hey.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm joking, man. No, it's been great. Thank you, guys.
All right, you can find Niko. It's at Niko Nice on YouTube, right?
That's right. Niko Nice everywhere. NIKONICE. YouTube is starting to take off. So is Instagram and TikTok. So, hey, follow me everywhere.
Yeah.
Got it.
Appreciate Thank you for joining us, Niko.
Absolutely. You all have a good night. Appreciate y'all. All right, Roger. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. So King and Roger, do we want to continue on the conversation? What's our time limit looking like? Is there still things on the agenda we wanted to address and discuss?
15,
I'll kind of leave the ball in your court.
Yeah, I got maybe like 10 or 15 more minutes. I got some work I got to get finished up.
Okay.
Yeah, same for me. I gotta put the kids down to sleep.
All right, fair enough. Triboulet, about the same, about 10
I
minutes.
love hearing stuff like that, man.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the whole purpose of this show, at least, is to bring about conversations that are not easy to discuss, to have that debate. And although I think there's some opposing views on the how things are accomplished and how they get done, I think the question that, at least from what I've gathered, is like, what is there any steps, do you think, like concrete steps, do you think that we could make as a country, not as on an individual level, to essentially start the process of making reparations, if you think they're necessary, and what do you think that would look like? And that can be anyone that's...
All right, I'll go first. I like the idea of building up the communities. I think that was something that Warren Buffett had touched on at one point in time when he was asked about reparations, because he was kind of against just giving money. But he said that, you know, we're building up communities and focusing on the lesser communities will kind of put you in the right direction. You understand what I'm saying? That could lower crime rate. That can lower a lot of issues with having to deal with the welfare issue, with having to deal with the separation of the Black family, as well as the other ethical nations of families and things of that nature, in the ghettos or in the lower or the poor neighborhoods. I think we could start there. I'm on board with all that, but we need to do something. Like Roger said, we need to do something. Something needs to be done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm big on education. I think that, you know, so basically young Black boys, they go to school and they're excited to learn, you know, they're excited to learn. But by second grade, they no longer want to be there. We have some serious issues with schools where teachers are over punishing our students, adultifying our students of color. And I think that where I would want to start, if someone said, Roger, we want to bring you on this panel, I would start with education. I would start with implementing equity-minded practices. I would start with educating. And it's a little scary now because, you know, you got the critical race theory stuff going around. But that's where I would start. I would start embedding a curriculum that shows these Black students what our people have done. And not only just Black students, but other students of color. Because right now within education, we see the white mathematicians. But there's many great Black, there's many great, Asian, African, women in mathematics who've done amazing things, but we typically just focus on the white men, right? And when you can develop self-efficacy, which is a student's self-confidence in their abilities to succeed, pair that with self-regulation, these students are able to reach great ends. So I'm talking about, getting people who are knowledgeable about these issues and do this work on things that have shown to be successful, resilience studies, and implement those into whatever policies that you want to do to promote this idea of reparations within education. I will say this: you can't save everybody, and you can't just throw money at 20 different issues. So it has to be pinpointed and strategic, So that's my last thoughts on that issue.
Sure. So given that we've talked at a macro level, like what could, as a government, what steps could we take? How about at a micro level? What's something do you think an average citizen could do, maybe on a daily, monthly, yearly, etc. basis, that would help discourage racial inequality or help promote things like racial equality and show racial injustices at an individual level?
I feel like making sure that the father is in the house is one of the biggest things that I think is important. In dealing with our community itself, we have a lot of single mothers and a lot of families that are not together, that are broken up. So they don't get the same amount of education, or they don't get the common education that a black father can give to his child. You understand what I'm saying? That is missing in our communities a lot. You know what I mean? So we start with that. We don't get the financial education as well. You know what I mean? Like Roger alluded to, by second grade, we don't want nothing to do with school, because I know when I was in school, and my father was kind of pushed away from me to a certain extent, I wasn't getting the same kind of discipline. I wasn't getting the same, my clothes was looking bad, my shoes was looking bad. So when I had to go to school, I loved school. I wanted to learn. I was a straight A student, but in going to school, I had to fight because I was getting teased for my clothes, you know what I mean, from where I lived. We had to fight with the other neighborhoods from where we lived. You understand what I'm saying? So it discouraged me from going to school a lot. It wasn't the education. It wasn't the curricular or the education itself. School was easy to me. You understand? And I'm just speaking from a personal perspective. School was easy to me. It's the other things. It's the other things on the outside that affects education as a whole. You understand what I'm saying? And we don't take those things into consideration when it comes to things. We think that it's just go to school, get an education, get a good job. You know what I mean? But when you're creating that, you're not creating entrepreneurs and thinkers. You're creating people. You're creating laborers. You're creating unskilled laborers. And that trickles down into the communities and the particular education that's being taught in the schools within the communities.
Roger, did you have anything you want to add to that? Or?
That's a good point. Like specifically to what he said,
just in general to the topic of at a micro level, since the last one was macro. At a micro level, what do you think we could do?
At a micro level, we need more agency. We need more people to take ownership of, the people who care, right? The people who actually care, whether you're white, whether you're, Iranian, whatever. The people who care. There needs to be the ownership on issues like this. I think that black men like myself, like Joel, King, I think that, successful black men, positive black men, there is some responsibility for us to, in whatever way that we can give back to our community, whether that's being in a program in a local YMCA or speaking. Niko, I've brought him to an elementary school, and he's spoken to students and had a great impact. So black men like us, we need to stand up and take ownership a lot of times. And I understand, because you can get worn out, right? And you can't save everybody. And I'm not saying put all your finances into the communities. But when you're able to give what you can in whatever way you can, if you're a person who is white and you're trying to understand these issues, educate yourself. Don't go to black people and ask them, how can I learn? You are probably an intelligent individual to notice, something, especially if you're watching this, you're interested to engage. So I know you have the ability to read and investigate or watch YouTube videos. More people need to take ownership in these issues instead of just standing on the sidelines and blindly not, partaking. That's my perspective.
All right, awesome. Triboulet, was there anything you'd like to add to either of those comments or questions that I put out, or any question that you have?
No.
All right.
I don't have any.
Fair enough. In that case, just to be respectful, Triboulet the Humanist.
Okay. Nah, that's just all on Facade, man.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you coming on. Niko, of course, as our other guest. But what we typically like to do is give our guest last word of the show. Since there's two of you, I don't really mind which order you do it in. But if you'd like to plug anything or promote anything or have a last word in general, I don't care which order you do it in. But you'll have last word of the show, and we'll wrap it up.
Oh, I'll go first. Nothing, man. Great pod, man. Great conversation, man. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I have my own podcast as well that we started with Terrell and with a couple of my other guys. It's more barbershop talk. We get into a lot of things and we get a little vulgar. It's called the King's Lair Podcast. Check us out. You know what I mean? A lot of laughs on there. But I love talking about more subjects like this. We have a lot of things coming up with Relic Media, a lot of big things that we're trying to do as far as, with the network and things of that nature. So just check us out. You can subscribe. So.
What's it called again?
Relic Media. Well, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Relic Media. Relic Media and the King's Lair Podcast.
King's Lair Podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for having me. I enjoy having these conversations. I think they're very meaningful, and they need to continue. My wife is calling me.
I think all our wives might be calling us. I know mine.
But I appreciate you guys, and I gotta go put these kids to sleep.
Yes, all right. Well, thank you guys both for coming on. Hope you have a wonderful evening. If you ever want to come back on or have another discussion of some sort, we'd love to have you back.
All right. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, guys.
Be safe, man. Be good out there.
See you guys.
All right.
All right, Triboulet. Let's go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. Was there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up the show?
Sure. We are looking for new guests. As of right now, we don't have any guests for next week. So if you know someone who wants to have some piece they want to speak, something that's on their mind, something that we said that you disagree with, but somebody who can argue the other position very well, bring them on the podcast. We like to engage with them, like talk with them regarding pretty much anything. Well, not anything, something that we're interested in. Just send them our way, and we can perhaps have a discussion about it.
Chances are good we can come up with something that we disagree with. That's easy enough.
Yeah, typically, our interests lie in like science, philosophy, religion, politics, stuff like that. So, anything. We keep reaching out to people, and they keep turning us down. So.
I get we're small, but we do appreciate the support. We do ask that you subscribe, like, share the videos. That way we can grow a little bit. If you like what we do, if you commented, please give us a like, a share. Even if you only watch for a couple minutes, or if you end up catching one of the shorts that we put up, because we're going to try starting doing some shorter episodes in the meantime that aren't full deep dives, because that's typically what our live show is dedicated towards and geared towards. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you do know somebody that wants to jump on, or if you'd like to jump on, don't be afraid. We try to, as you can see, we try to be respectful of all of our guests, even when there's, 5 of us on at a time. I don't think there was a time where we were straight up over talking each other to the point where we couldn't understand. And we kind of let people take their turns and have their say. With that in mind, if we don't see you, well, we'll see you next week no matter what, but next week, if we don't have a guest, it's going to be a different style of podcast, because we're going to tackle a bunch of shorter topics that we have listed out and break those down into episodes for YouTube to try to help grow the channel. Not to sound too needy, but we need to grow the channel. So, that is that.
Yep.
Just being honest.
Yeah.
All right. Well, see you guys next week, one way or the other. Have a good day.